So while we're getting things set up, I'll just say a few things for introduction here. So this is the panel on the 4 laws. Now, number one, Mr. LaRouche, who initiated the idea of the 4 laws, which has the different aspects of the Glass-Steagall, which is the separation of commercial banking, investment banking, and insurance, which since the repeal of Glass-Steagall in '99 has all come under one umbrella, which really means the gambling debts of Wall Street and really the European banks and so forth are liabilities of all of us and all of our fellow Americans under the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which will be forced to bail out the bad gambling debts of Wall Street. But furthermore, there's much more to it in the sense of a political control. So that's the reimposition or the reinstating of Glass-Steagall, which again was repealed in '99, is the first aspect of that, of the 4 laws. The second is Hamilton's design for a national credit system, national banking as well. So Paul Glumaz will somewhat take those as a conception. And then the third is infrastructure, but not just simply that all infrastructure is equal, but rather that you have to make a certain directionality towards your improvement. And that always has to be at, you have to rise above the inherent attrition of whatever level you're acting at right now. In other words, if we kept drilling oil, for example, there would be a point where the amount of work you're putting into it relative to what you get out of it, you get to a break-even point such that it becomes, you go into a collapse mode if you pursue it any longer. So going to a next platform of development such as fusion power is not just kind of an optional feature, it's a necessity. So, so anyway, and so then the fourth part of the 4 laws gets at the science driver, the importance of science and technology as really being the real drivers of an economy. Now, what Mr. LaRouche develops in his 4 laws paper, which I think we should have copies of, if we don't, you can get it online, is that it really is an integrated concept. In other words, it might have these 4 parts, but it's really an overall integrated principle. So I say that by way of introduction, that kind of keep your mind open to see if you can see what the common theme is through them all. And so I think without further ado, Paul Glumaz has been working with LaRouche for 43 years, coordinate, and is key aspect of our work up here in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle and Vancouver. So I think we'll just let Paul.
Okay. All right. So in this short presentation, I will deal with aspects of LaRouche's 4 laws, along with LaRouche's predecessor, Alexander Hamilton, whose 4 reports to Congress in 1790-91 are coherent with the first 3 of LaRouche's 4 laws. We have just produced a pamphlet. It's a pre-color version of the pamphlet. I think you can get a copy at the literature table. It's entitled America's Future on the New Silk Road. And it's subtitled The Physical Economic, LaRouche's 4 Laws, The Physical Economic Principles for the Recovery of the United States. And this is the document we are getting out to the policy people, to the elected officials, to the population in general as the conceptual basis for what the United States under this new administration must do at this time. Now, we come we come to a time when Donald Trump is indicating, as you heard earlier from Michael, a commitment to move the U.S. in the direction of these 4 laws. However, Trump has massive opposition and has to deal with a sea of incomprehension. In this respect, our movement, the LaRouche movement, is now in a co-pedagogical relationship with the President of the United States. We are in a co-pedagogical relationship and with the responsibility of educating the population, the politicians, and the policy layers. Now, I will start with something not directly in the pamphlet, and that is the issue of money. This is an area of great confusion, which it actually should not be. Money, the medium of exchange of goods and services, is a technology created by society. The development of the form and use of money is as much a part of the economic evolution of mankind as the discovery of fire or the invention of the steam engine. But like any powerful technology that society has created and is dependent on increasingly, money can also be used as a weapon of unspeakable criminality and can be used to enslave entire populations by merely restricting its availability or controlling who has access. As a technology, money allows for the interconnection of trade of larger groups, nations, and continents. Trade beyond barter is not possible without money. The development of money has undergone many stages. The emergence of gold and silver as a basis for money is still with us. But gold and silver have limitations. It is cumbersome to use, and the volume of trade possible is largely limited by the amount of active gold and silver in circulation. That's not the gold and silver that you're keeping in under your mattress or whatever. It's the amount of active gold and silver in circulation. It was actually, and most people in the West don't know this, it was actually Chinese civilization that broke through these limitations and invented paper and paper money. Gold and silver could be stored and paper money could be issued in many multiples of the gold and silver that was stored, essentially stored on deposit. This was used extensively by China's last 3 dynasties. It is doubtful that without paper money, China could have had the volume of economic activity that had made China the most productive and advanced civilization in its time. The Chinese back then had already pioneered the use of state credit through its imperial system to expand their economy. Europe and their colonies, European nations and their colonies, only began using paper money to a small degree in the 1600s and into the 1700s. It is Hamilton who fully established the use and value of paper money as leveraged by gold and silver, and a national bank. Okay, he's the first to really make this paper money system outside of the historical Chinese example a method. Now, I'm going to go into now the genius of Hamilton. This is very short, but I hope you get a sense of this. In dealing with the crisis of the lack of money at the founding of the Republic, Hamilton's full report to Congress in 1791 represent a revolutionary breakthrough in understanding the relationship of money, credit, banking, and the physical economy. Now, credit can be an IOU, but it can also be a form of money. It can have two aspects. Money is what you use to exchange goods and services. Now, I will quickly go through a distillation of the three principles that Hamilton develops in his reports. These are not the specific things that he proposes. These are the actual principles that are distilled, which I distilled from an examination of his reports, and the relationship of these first three principles, these three principles of Hamilton's, with LaRouche's first three of the four laws. And I'll also illustrate this with some historical examples. These principles are first, and these are very basic, but they are revolutionary. First is the concept of financial stability. Second is the concept of productive capital. Third is the concept of the development of manufacturers, or the increase of the productive powers of labor through the development of manufacturers. So I'll deal with the first one, financial stability. Well, first of all, without financial stability, there can be no development. Speculators and money changers rule when there is financial instability. And that goes for back then as well as today. When you have financial instability, the speculators and the money changers rule. You don't rule. You don't have a nation. Now, when Hamilton wrote these reports, the situation, which was at the beginning of the U.S. Republic, there was a total of $73 million worth of unpayable Revolutionary War debt circulating, whose ultimate value was in constant speculation. As you didn't know what the value was going to be because you didn't know what was going to happen and so forth. Gold and silver were scarce, and made scarcer by the instability, which caused people to hoard their gold and silver in times of instability. The situation then was similar to today in the poorest of African nations. In the most undeveloped parts of the world, that is the situation. There is no financial stability. Okay. Now, Hamilton did not propose to pay any of the debt off. This is a very important point. He did not want to pay off the debt. He did not want to pay off the debt either at a very small fraction of its face value. Rather, he proposed to fund the debt at its face value. This was revolutionary. And his proposal, which was adopted, funded the entire debt at between 4 to 6% interest per year, depending upon which of the 7 plans were being offered. You know, some plans involved putting gold in, some plans involved turning, but all the debt, all the Revolutionary War debt had to be turned into treasuries. But there were different plans on how to do that. And the debt was funded by placing a tax on tobacco, liquor, spices, and the sale of public lands. So with roughly $3 to $4 million of annual revenue per year, the debt was fully funded. The debt was fully funded. Now, this converted this vast Revolutionary War debt to treasury notes. Those treasury notes became a stable source of income for those holding the treasuries. Or they could be exchanged because they were valuable. Also, this funded debt was in small enough denominations I mean bigger than coins or what have you, but small enough denominations that it could also circulate as money as well. It was actually better to have the debt than to have gold and silver, because gold and silver did not give you, didn't give you any funds. Now, this new stability then drove the cumbersome gold and silver out of hoarding into private banks, where it could earn something. Private banks in turn issued paper notes as loans to commerce. Now I'm going to quote Hamilton on this from the first report on public I think it's on money, on credit. But these good effects of a public debt are only to be looked for when, by being well funded, it has acquired an adequate and stable value. Till then, it has rather a contrary tendency. The fluctuation and insecurity incident to it in an unfunded state render it a mere commodity, and a precarious one. As such, being only an object of occasional and particular speculation, all the money applied to it is so much diverted from the more useful channels of circulation, for which the thing itself affords no substitute. So that, in fact, one serious inconvenience of an unfunded debt is that it contributes to the scarcity of money. This distinction, which has been little, if at all, attended to, is of the greatest moment. It involves a question immediately interesting to every part of the community, which no other than this: whether the public debt, by a provision for it on true principles, shall be rendered a substitute for money, or whether, by being left as it is, or by being provided for in such a manner as will wound those principles and destroy confidence, it shall be suffered to continue as it is, a pernicious drain of our cash from the channels of productive industry. Now,